The Forbidden Quarter, Unveiling the Dark Secrets of Fresno Neighborhood. Scary story. I have always said it. An altered state of mind attracts beings from the lower astral. No matter how hard you try to keep them away from you, if you don't improve your mood, you won't be able to make them flee. Even if you go to a parapsychologist or an exorcist. But when we talk about witches, it is different. Compared to ghosts, I didn't believe in witches, nor in their power to manipulate reality, until I met one. I moved to Guadalajara because the situation in my town in Guerrero was quite complex. I reserved the name of my town to protect my privacy. I was very young and inexperienced at the time, which is why I had to do very hard work. What cost me the most was looking for a place to sleep. Sometimes I stayed at construction sites when I worked as a bricklayer. Sometimes I stayed at friends' houses. When I finally got a good job and raised enough money, I rented an apartment in a rundown neighborhood in the Fresno neighborhood. Another thing I also wanted to do once I achieved a little economic stability was to enter the school of parapsychology. During my adolescence, I witnessed several apparitions and strange phenomena. More than anything else, I wanted to give an explanation to all that. The neighborhood had a half-ruined area where only 2 apartments were standing. The entrance was forbidden, fenced with yellow security tape. The rooms were occupied mostly by people in a similar situation to mine. Several of them even came from Guerrero, not from my town, but they were fellow countrymen at last. It didn't take me long to make friends with some of the neighbors. They were all very friendly. One of them lived with his mother, a woman in her 60s who was dedicated to cleansing and herbal remedies. She was very charitable, and although several people were afraid of her because they referred to her as a witch, I never heard of her doing harmful work. Her practices were limited to curing the evil eye, among others. As for the area of the neighborhood that was closed, no one went there, not even the dogs or cats. From the first day I set foot in that place, I felt a very heavy vibe. I peeked in once. One of the apartments was infested with damp spots, while the other had a huge hole in one of its front walls. Although one of the neighbors told me that it was forbidden to enter that area, there was no need. The appearance of the place like that, and the vibe it gave off, were enough reasons to make you stay away. I spent the first few months without any major problems. However, when August arrived, rumors began to spread in the neighborhood. People said they heard footsteps on the roofs. Others said that the closed part sounded as if it was inhabited. They even claimed to see lights at night. What happened to me was that one Thursday, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a loud knock on my door. I did not open the door directly, but I went to a window. I went through the curtain. Then I saw that outside there was an exaggeratedly tall person. Due to the darkness of the hallway, I could not distinguish very well what kind of clothes he was wearing, and to look at his face, I would need to have opened it, because due to his height, it was not possible to see it from that small window. I stepped back, feeling more perplexed than frightened. Not even a minute passed, when again there was a knock at the door. This time, I heard a voice speaking my name. What scared me the most was that his voice sounded too much like my mother's voice, who had been dead for a couple of years. I didn't want to look out again. I looked for an image among my things, where I have the prayer of the Magnificent One. I left it stuck on the door's protection. Then I started to pray. They did not knock again that night, but I could not sleep. I kept thinking that, at any moment, they would knock at the door again. When I opened the door in the morning, I felt some slimy things fall on my head and face. I looked at the floor. I almost threw up when I realized that the floor was boiling with maggots. I washed the entrance with soap powder and water. As soon as I got home from work, I sought out my neighbor who cleaned to tell her what happened to me that night, as well as my encounter with the maggots. She told me that an ancient evil was wandering around the neighborhood, that this was happening because of the month we were in. From August to October, the evil was stronger, and that we should be careful, especially on the night of St. John. The lady sprinkled holy water in my apartment, as well as in the whole neighborhood. This only worked for a couple of days, because again rumors began to circulate about a very tall woman knocking on the door of the apartments. I felt a little nervous at night. Fortunately, it was not my turn to knock on my door again. My encounter with that being was in another place in the neighborhood. I had just entered the school of parapsychology. Even so, I had the knowledge to identify that the activity we were witnessing was not simple ghosts. It was something heavier, just as the healer said. The thing is that I went to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those days I arrived very late to the apartment, but it happened that several of my schoolmates and I went out to drink some beers. I arrived at about 1:30 in the morning to the neighborhood. Due to the apparitions, people went home early, so both the neighborhood and the neighborhood were completely alone. As I had several beers on me, I didn't feel frightened. In fact, I didn't even remember that they were scary in the neighborhood. You know how the spirit is emboldened by alcohol. When I arrived, I crossed the entrance gate to the neighborhood. I felt two children run out beside my legs. They laughed as they advanced in the darkness. I wanted to follow them, to ask them what they were doing in the street at that hour. The witch horror story. I followed their laughter until I reached the cordoned-off area. There, the children's laughter changed to screams of horror. I couldn't make out much. The corridor is poorly lit. Even so, I saw how a huge silhouette crouched down and pulled the children into the hole in the wall. I was scared out of my mind and ran back to my apartment. I sat on a sofa bed, which was my only piece of furniture. I couldn't stop shaking. I didn't understand what I had just seen. I knew that the biggest shadow belonged to the entity that knocked on my door once. The screams of the children had some notes from beyond the grave. The next day, I spent it thinking about what I had seen, if it was real or just a dream. That day, I didn't have to go to school, so I went back when it was still sunny. I found two neighbors talking near the cordoned-off area. They were talking about going inside the apartments and seeing what was going on, because they believed that what was happening in the neighborhood was caused by someone performing witchcraft inside. If it had been at night, I would not have gone in, but since there was still light, I offered to go in with them. Inside, we found only half-collapsed walls, a lot of garbage, and some broken furniture. We entered each of the rooms, but nowhere did we see any candles or any symbol drawn to indicate that someone was casting spells. The only strange thing I saw were some red rust stains on some tiles where there was once a bathroom. We left the place and went to see the healer, who gave us some bottles of holy water and some sackfuls of earth, then ordered us to return to the ruined area, sprinkle the water while we prayed the creed, and before leaving, put the sackfuls in 4 specific points, forming a cross. This did quiet the paranormal activities, at least for a month. In the course of that time, I adopted a cat, as I heard at school that these animals help to cleanse bad energies. The kitten was not very noisy and did not usually leave the apartment, even if I left the door open. One night, I heard the cat screech loudly. Seconds later, I heard the window next to the door slam shut. I got up suddenly and turned on the bedroom light. I couldn't find the cat anywhere. I feared the worst. The next morning, I went into the cordoned-off area, where I found my cat dead. This was my breaking point there. I was determined to move out of the house as soon as possible. The lady who did the cleaning fell seriously ill and went to the hospital. Several of us neighbors went to see her. According to the doctors, she had a diabetic shock that almost ended her life. When we were able to talk to her, she told us that the real reason she was in the hospital was that she was confronted with the evil that dwells in the depths of the neighborhood. According to her, it was the spirit of a witch who was attracted by the light of several people. She asked us all to place some metal scissors forming a cross on our doors. She also told us to form a barrier with grain salt delimiting the area where the witch was hiding. We did what the curandera told us to do, and although we never heard any more knocking at the door at night, behind the line of salt, we often saw children appearing. There were people who mentioned seeing the face of the witch. According to them, she had a pointed nose and black eyes. Yo nunca la vi de nuevo la vez que toca mi puerta, no pude verle el rostro. Me imagino que este tipo de seres cambian la forma en que se representan. Quien sabe que el su heredera formar. Yo misma después de 2 meses no he to a visitar esa vecindad. Thank you for joining us for this spine-tingling story. We hope you found it both thrilling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this video, please consider participating in our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Your support goes a long way in helping us create more engaging content for you. Goodbye, and may you always tread carefully in the world of the unknown.